Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Alana and today you are joining me with my January wrap-up. I read this many books in the month of January, and let me just start off by telling you that there were actually 3 5-star reads in this bunch. A 5-star rating is a very hard thing to get from me. I rate a lot of books like 4 stars, 4.5 stars. I don't rate books too low because I tend to enjoy the majority of what I read, but to get a 5-star and to get 3 5 stars in 1 month is pretty damn good. So in this stack that I'm looking at right now, it looks like we have 1 urban fantasy, 1 sci-fi dystopian novel, we've got a classic fantasy adventure novel, then we have 3 YA contemporaries, which is unusual for me, a historical fiction, and also a picture book kind of. So all up that equals 8 books read in the month of January 2020, and I'm very proud of myself. I was sort of lagging a little bit towards the middle of the month there, but then towards the end of the month my reading just took off again. As usual, I am going to start with my least favorite book and then roll all the way through to my favorite book of the month. So without further ado, let's jump in. Coming in at number 8 for last month was Infinity Sun by Adam Silvera. You can find my reading vlog for this up above, and that was basically my experience reading this book and being let down. I had a lot of expectations for this, which I probably shouldn't have going in. It is Adam Silvera's debut fantasy, since he usually writes in the contemporary genre, and I don't know, this was just pitched to high hell. It had all the things that I thought I'd really like in it. It had the urban fantasy setting, it had like different types of powers and abilities and magic, it had magical creatures like phoenixes and hydras, and it had a brother sort of rivalry thing happening there, and the chosen one trope, and the person that doesn't want to be the chosen one, and just flopped. Now if you're out there watching this and going, stop wrecking my favorite book of the year so far, I'm sorry. It's just, that was my experience reading it. Mainly I had 2 major problems with this novel, and that was the pacing and the world building, which you can find in my first ever book babble. I'll leave that linked up the top. And yeah, I think I've talked about this book enough on my channel now for you to know my feelings on it. Basically just oddly paced, too many point of views, not enough world building, and not enough history or character refinement / development. So this one did end up getting 2.5 stars from me. Moving on. Please don't come for me with this one. I didn't hate it, but the next book I have to talk about is The Lord of the Rings, the first installment, which is The Fellowship of the Ring. Now I feel like I'm in that category of people who couldn't get into the writing style and had to try other means instead. So I did read this one via audiobook, and the audiobook was a lot. Like, it was a whole production. So if you're someone who loves a full cast of voice actors and the whole sounds and effects that go into some audiobooks, definitely try this one. It was a ride. It was hilarious at points, which I'm not sure if it was entirely meant to be that way. I myself found it engaging, if not a little bit sort of, I don't want to say old because I don't want to offend anyone, but it sort of gave me Wizard of Oz vibes, like the original movie. That's the vibes I got when I was reading this via audiobook. So basically, everyone's heard of The Lord of the Rings. I don't need to explain it again. I'm aware that originally The Lord of the Rings was all 1 book until someone came along and split it into 3. But yeah, I don't know if I should try and actually go back and read this now with my eyeballs instead of with my ears and see if I get a better reading experience now that I've actually consumed it and my brain has, you know, like a structure to go off of. This reading experience ended up getting a 3 stars from me, so middle ground. It's just a classic fantasy that people either really, really love or sort of go a little bit like, yeah, towards, and I think I fall into that category, unfortunately. And then the next book I have to talk about is another one that I actually read via audiobook, and that is The Steinke by Isabel Carmody. If you've been watching my previous wrap-ups, you'll notice that I've been doing a reread of this entire trilogy via audiobook, which has so far been going really well, but I have since, after finishing this book via audiobook, taken a little bit of a break because this was very, very long to listen to. I can't remember the exact amount of hours that the audiobook was, but I found myself sort of losing focus every now and again throughout listening to this just because it's a chunker. Like, these books get thick. You've probably also heard me describe the first book in this series badly enough a lot of times as it is, so maybe just go watch one of my other videos to know what it's about. In short, it is a fantasy slash dystopian type read where there are misfits with powers and abilities, and it's about a place called Obernewton because the series is actually called the Obernewton Chronicles, and your main character is Elspeth Gordy. This is book 5 in the series as well, I should say, so I'm not going to tell you anything about this one because spoilers. So because this one took a little bit to get through, I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. One day I do want to go through and physically reread them all again, but just because I feel like I don't have time slash the room on my TBR to suddenly take a hiatus from everything else and read a 7-book long series, I've just been doing it via audiobook. So hopefully I get back to my reread soon. Next up, I have Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Saeed. You can find my reading vlog for this linked up top and down below. This is a YA contemporary with a political setting to it, and in this one we follow 2 young adults, Jamie and Maya, who have to go door knocking for a political campaign. Throughout this book we get some really good representation from both of those 2 characters. We learn about their different cultures and backgrounds, and also politics a little bit. I found it really engaging. There's a cute little romance in there too, along with some really good messages in it. I feel like these 2 authors teamed up and just smashed it with trying to get a point across with certain things that are going wrong in politics in America, and I really enjoyed it. I will say that the ending for this one wrapped up very, very quickly for me. It sort of built up this big climax and then just went, "Nyeh, here's your cookie." But I still really enjoyed this book. There's also a side character in this that if you watch my vlog, you will know that I can't stand them. But I'm not going to tell you which character it is because you'll just have to read this book and find out for yourself. Which you will find out, especially on page 411. They're a butthead. I'll also say that I think Jamie was my favorite character, but Maya definitely grew on me. She started out as a little bit sort of angsty, but that's just because of her situation, whereas Jamie was more sort of stable throughout. But I really liked how they played off each other with that and how they grew and supported each other throughout. So definitely a really good YA contemporary to pick up, and you know I don't say that often because I don't usually read YA contemporary anymore. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Changing pace a bit, and we have the one historical fiction that I read in January, and that is The White Queen by Philippa Gregory. This is part of the Plantagenet and Tudor Court novels. It's this really long series that Philippa Gregory has written basically from here to here. All the books in the series, and predominantly they all follow female characters in the time periods, which is really, really cool. In this one we follow Elizabeth Woodville as she meets Edward, who becomes king after sort of usurping from King Henry VI. So this is before King Henry VIII, and in this one we have the Cousins' War in full display. So you have the Yorks against the Lancasters, and it's cousin against cousin, and it's a lot, and I really loved it. I feel like too Philippa Gregory took this to a little bit of a magical place too, because there's the myth of the Lady of the Rivers in Elizabeth Woodville's ancestry, and I loved how that came about too. So far, of the books I've read of hers, they have been very political based with no element of that whatsoever, so I liked how those 2 started winding together in this. And basically you get to learn about a point in history from a woman's perspective where it was cutthroat and there were lots of battles and who was going to succeed to the throne, and yeah, I loved it so very, very much. For this one, I think I rated a 4.5 stars out of 5, so pretty good. Towards the top end of my favorites for this series so far, and it's made me really excited to read the book before this, which is The Lady of the Rivers, and also the book after the one after this. Yes, I'm reading them out of order. I am trying to fix that slowly throughout this year, which is called The Kingmaker's Daughter. So very keen to continue on with this series. Now we're down to the last 3 books of this video, which all got 5 stars. The first one being The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. Hopefully. This is a really heartwarming, motivational picture book story that anyone can enjoy. It's got some really good morals in here and it's just so insightful. And when I read it, I was sitting there. I read it in one sitting because it is a picture book and it is very quick to get through. But I remember sitting there and just stopping because it was nearly bringing tears to my eyes. And it's sort of nearly doing it now. I don't know why I'm so emotional about this book. It had some really good one-liners. Asking for help isn't giving up, said the horse. It's refusing to give up. This book just, it made me feel a lot of things that I wasn't particularly prepared to feel. And having read this, I feel like I can really take some of this book and just put it towards my mindset and towards everyday life because it was just so wholesome. If you want a wholesome book to share with your partner, with your kids, with yourself, do yourself a favor and pick up this one. The second to last book that I have to talk about and that I rated 5 stars for January is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Wow, just wow. In this one, we follow Imani as she is going through her senior year in high school. And along with that, she also has a 2-year-old daughter. So right from the get-go, this book has teenage pregnancy representation in it. And I fell in love with Imani and with her character and her family and her hardworking nature. Alongside of that, Imani also expresses her love for cooking and for food and how food can transport you into a memory, into a time and place, and that element of this book was so enjoyable as well. It was so cozy and comforting just reading Imani cooking up recipes, sharing them with her family and friends, and finding peace of mind through food while she's trying to succeed at life, essentially, and raising her daughter and graduating high school and deciding where she wants to go after that. I also really loved Malachi as a side character. He was just wholesome and calming and a great addition to this novel. It also has some really good representation in it and I just loved it. I don't know what else to say. I loved it. And then topping off my reading month was Call It What You Want by Bridget Kemmerer. Is it Kemmerer or is it Kemmerer? Let me just start by saying I was not expecting to love this book. I've read one other book by this author and that was A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and that book had to grow on me a little bit. I found the characters very teenagey, very angsty, not communicating, and it frustrated me a lot. So going into this one, I was thinking that I was going to get a similar reading experience, and then I didn't. In this one, we follow Megan and Rob, so we have a dual perspective novel, and basically both of them have their own shit that they're trying to deal with while they go through school. So yes, another YA contemporary and another 5-star reads. Who am I this month? I have no idea. I don't know what happened, but I'm really glad that I read this. I would also definitely categorize this as hard-hitting contemporary because right off the bat, both characters say in their first chapters, this is the shit that I'm dealing with, and you've got things like attempted suicide, you've got teen pregnancy, you've got peer pressure and the overall pressure to succeed and do well and what that can lead you to do, and wow. Both protagonists in this are also very self-aware, they are very mature, they understand their flaws, they're hard on themselves, but they have people around them to try and lift them up again. I can't pick a favorite between the two. I enjoyed reading both of their perspectives so very much. Also, this book has one of my new most favorite side characters ever, and that is Mr. London. He was there as a supportive side character to offer help to someone when they needed it without putting it into a setting that made them feel like they were getting help. It was a more casual setting and I loved him so much. For a character that was only in the book for like this much, I loved him so very much. Again, lots of representation in this book, lots of voices from different backgrounds, and I just thoroughly enjoyed this. So that's it. Those are the 8 books that I read in the month of January. I really did start the year off with a bang, and I'm super excited to hopefully continue on this high because, man, there are a lot of 5-star reads in there. There was only one book that I didn't like at all, so I'm counting that as a win. I will just quickly point out too that we are in the first week of February as I'm filming this, and I have had another 5-star read, so make sure to keep your eye out for my wrap up for this month when that comes around at the end of the month, because I just feel like I'm on a roll. So please keep the slump away. Hopefully I can continue on this high that I'm having at the moment with reading. As always, I would love to hear from you, so just drop a comment down below with your favorite book of the month or your least favorite book of the month, and let's keep the conversation going. I will also leave linked down below in the comments the videos that I mentioned during this one, so if you want to check them out, they are there for you to look at. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!